Goedendag, good day. How are you, lovely human being, feeling at this moment? My name is Phylicia Joy Kloes, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about the motory skills in the early childhood. I'm a Montessori teacher, and welcome to my classroom. First, I'm going to talk about the bigger motory skills, and then I'm going to talk about the fine motory skills. So let's get started. When you walk into my classroom, you see these lines on the floor. These are what are called in Dutch streeplooplijnen, or translated to walking lines. The children basically learn to use their body, their eye and body coordination to walk the line and to stay focused on this. In the middle of the circle, the kids can actually work on 3 different mats. However, around it, the children can work on improving their balance and improving on their coordination. As I tried to demonstrate for you, the walking line in the classroom is a typical aspect of a Montessori classroom. It technically should be a circle to be exact, however, this shape works better for my classroom and my setup. And the children that are capable of walking the line with focus and have their eye and body coordination developed in a certain way to where they find that easy, then we can make it more tricky. For example, I can give them a mug and tell them to fill it up with water, and then they walk the line and try to not spill. Another thing that the children can practice is, for example, having a feather on their hand and then walk and attempt to not let the feather fall. Another thing the children can do is have a spoon with a toy egg and not let the egg drop. There are a lot of different ways that the children can use these lines to improve their coordination, and this is a skill that seems to be something many adults forget about, that young children actually develop this coordination still. However, it's so important for us to create an environment where they can actually practice this. In class, this is kind of like a movement activity that they can do. Of course, we also have physical education. We have 2 different kinds of physical education in the week. One time a week, we have a filled classroom with materials, and the other day we have an empty PE classroom. Depending on the skills that the PE teacher wants to teach, the PE classroom has different setups throughout the year. For example, sometimes the children practice their balance either on a bigger bench or a narrower bench. The empty classroom is usually used for games. Sometimes it's tag games. They're learning about when you're tagged, then you have to, for example, do a certain activity. And some younger children are not yet that far to where, for example, when they've been tagged, they then, for example, sing a song or sit at a bench and count until when they come back. So that also shows us teachers how far along the child is with their social development as well. Sometimes it's other activities, like for example, what I like to do is touch your elbow on something blue, touch your wrist on something pink, touch your nose on something white, etc. But also games like zakdoekje leggen. I'm not sure what that is in English. There must be a game that is translated in English, like a nursery little rhyme game that children can do. However, these classes are focused on the social development as well as the big motory skill development. The children at our school also get Beweegwijs. Beweegwijs is basically educational games outside during the outside playtime. The children get to both explore their big motory skills as well as social skills. For example, Beweegwijs is set up in different zones. There's a relaxation zone where the children can literally just relax. There is the blue zone, which is about playing next to one another, where the children are both independently playing and learning skills on their own. There is the yellow zone, which is an area where children learn to wait their turn through alternate play. There's the orange zone, where the children are learning to share with the materials, and through this exercise they keep up the game. For the young children, they don't work with the green zone nor the red zone. In the green zone, the children are learning to be very considerate of one another, and the red zone is about playing against one another, and sportsmanship is a really important part of this zone as well. And some children are not yet, for example, ready to step into the red zone yet, because, for example, they are sore losers and then they're told, okay, you know what, you can come back next time, or they get handed the tools that they need in order to become a better sportsman. With Beweegwijs, they also learn their big motory skills, as well as some social behavior development. Now let's focus on the fine motory skills. So young children develop from first their arms, and they slowly develop more and more to where this is the movement that they'll be practicing more and more. This is the crafting area, which was not tidied too well the day before yesterday. Inside these drawers there are different items they can use, as well as some other bigger items. An activity that's really good for the young children to do is simultaneously make a drawing with crayons on a big paper that doesn't move, and then for both their arms to make the same movement. And with this, you can create different kinds of drawings. It's really good for the brain halves to work together. It's really good for the fine motory skill development. And eventually, when the children are working towards their 3-finger point, we use different work that also promotes that. For example, a lot of the puzzles here in class have these beads sticking out, so that way the children can grab it using their 3 fingers, which is preparing them for writing using the proper pencil grip. Young children also learn to make use of the different tools we have to craft with. Children learn to use the scissors properly. First, for example, the child will just make cuts, and then eventually the child will be able to follow a line. After that, the child will be able to make the other hand steer and follow a more difficult line. And slowly but surely, children will be capable of cutting more and more smaller items out of paper. So for example, then we can practice another activity which is mainly about cutting, but for example, also about visual discrimination, where the child will look for a certain letter in a newspaper and cut that out. And newspaper letters can be tiny, so when children are capable of cutting these tiny letters out, we know their cutting skills are pretty far. We also have crayons in class, which allow for the children to first use this grip, which is very normal in younger children, and eventually they'll start using their pencils and crayons like this. We use these triangle pencils in class because it helps for them to place their fingers a certain way, and then the pencil leans in their frame. And what we try to do is we try to correct it when we notice that a child is ready for it. However, it often happens that the child needs a lot of repetition in how to properly use the tools. Children also use this grip with the prick mat and the prick pen? That's not English. We have a mat and a pen that has a point on it, so children can poke and zip papers, so they can make holes in things without having to cut it all the way, or without having to use symmetry. We also have paint. We have a painting board in the hallway, and the children can paint paintings there. We also have water paint in class, so that requires a little bit of a different skill. I think it's important for the children to learn both the acrylic paint as well as the water paint, because it's two different materials really, so it also creates different results. Something else I really like is for the children to explore different fabrics. Like, for example, I keep fabrics that are of older clothes or older rags that I don't use at home anymore or I don't use in class anymore, and that way the children can craft with that. I always like to have a variety of paper available as well as a variety of materials. Like, for example, what I collect from home are different kinds of boxes, toilet paper rolls, and I just collect them and then bring them to class and then put them in one of these drawers. And sometimes I think of an assignment with it, and other times I just let the children explore and craft, and then they create these things with it. What I find important is for the children to learn to craft either through my assignments or through assignments of their own, and that really sparks their creativity. I think it's really important for us teachers to create such an environment to where children can learn to use their creativity and to express themselves. And young children are a lot better at just creating to create than us adults. I feel like us adults overthink things way more. However, I do see perfectionism in these young 4 to 6-year-olds in my class already, which is quite sad. It's important for the young children to learn to experience their creativity and to express their creativity. Now, on a more serious note, I have been working at this school for 9 school years, and the amount of reduced fine motory skills I have seen these past years are honestly insane. I can really tell that children are less creative at home, using their fine motory skills. I can tell children play less outside, developing their big motory skills. And of course, it's not for all children. Every family is different, so I'm really generalizing with what I'm saying right now. However, I truly notice a difference in skills. And I notice this when they draw, I notice this when they cut, when they use glue. I can tell when a child, for example, is taught how to use glue in class, and then when they start to glue things together, they use a lot of glue. And for me, that just shows, okay, you're just exploring what this glue is doing. I don't tell them to not do it because I think it's important to understand the explorative stage of the young child. So, for example, a child who doesn't use glue that much at home will likely play with the glue more than use it to put one and one together. The same comes with folding. We have these square papers, and I'm not a big fan of the 16 square assignments because it doesn't require a lot of creativity. They're often just following along with the steps. However, it is an important skill for me to teach and to see if the child is capable of following instructions, as well as if the child is improving on how to fold, like for example, putting the points together and all that. But I've seen such a reduction in fine motory skills in these young children. A lot of these children are behind their tablets so much, and you know, for me, I find it quite difficult to put a grip on how many hours children spend looking at these devices. Their fine motory skills are really decreasing. Their eye and hand coordination, their eye-body coordination is really decreasing. Their attention span is truly decreasing. Their need to be entertained is really increasing. Children don't really know how to get bored anymore, and when they are bored, they often want the adult to find the solution for that. But the decrease of fine motory skills is something that I honestly am quite worried about. And as I mentioned before, it's not every parent and it's not every child who has such a development to where I'm so worried about it, but I do notice it. And these things come in different ways. Like for example, children often learn how to use a broom. Children often learn how to use a dustbin. Children often learn how to hold certain things, how to clean their table, how to clean their own face, how to dress themselves. And all these skills, it's not just taught in class. It's, you know, once the school day is done, it's not like the children are done learning. They continue learning wherever they go, from the school to their house, inside their house, in the grocery store, in the library, at the playground, etc. So yeah, it's an interesting development to see. It's so important for these young children to, you know, get allowed to get a little dirty, to craft, to create, and just learn afterwards how to tidy up, how to clean the table. The fine motory skills are also practiced through the daily activity working cabinet, and the children learn to sort colors using tongs. They learn to cut paper through different designs. They also learn to wipe the table, open and close jars, or use the beads palette and either create their own things or copy something. I usually also have clay in this cabinet, however, this time around it was definitely due for a cleanup, therefore it is not inside. Inside of the math cabinet, there is also some motory skill activity, like for example, making beads on a cord, and I have some Legos, some building materials, and some plus. Of course, the sensory cabinet is a staple in the Montessori classroom, and this also has a lot of work that allows the children to develop their fine and bigger motory skills. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If so, please leave a thumbs up. Stay tuned for another educational video because it's almost the end of the school year. However, I feel like I'm not done yet talking about all the things that I have learned and grown to understand about the development of young children over these years. So I just want to finish this educational bit on my channel. Hopefully you like this. Leave a thumbs up if so, leave a comment below and we can have a conversation there. And thank you so much for spending your time with me to watch up until this point.